with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, boy, the Biden administration has certainly been delivering on what we should have expected, right? We have the war on energy. I mean, that's like very clear. I mean, look at what's happening to one of the most productive parts of our economy, an area of our economy that we can all be proud of. I mean, energy independence in our country. Who would have ever thought? And we were really getting into an incredible momentum there to make that grow and grow and grow. And look, I don't know. I mean, what did they say the other day? Hey, let's just have all those coal miners make solar panels. Let's see how that's going to work.
Yeah, well, I mean, ironically, the only part of the economy that worked when Obama was the president was the energy part. The energy sector was the one thing that was carrying us.
Despite him.
Yeah, despite him. And now we're back. You know, my God, any minute now, Doc Brown from Back to the Future is going to be on the screen. They're going to probably, get him to be part of the administration. But the truth of the matter is, yeah, we're reliving. I don't know whether this is Obama 2.0 or 3.0. What would you consider 3.0? He had two.
He's going beyond.
This is the third.
He's going beyond.
So here we are, and I shudder.
The Keystone Pipeline. Remember how many shows we did about the Keystone?
Oh, yeah.
And we were moving and grooving, and it was going, and it was going to be an incredible thing. Good for the environment, right? I mean, sending energy from Canada in a pipeline versus on rail trucks, which the railroad, right? We've talked a lot about that.
Well, yeah.
All the accidents that can happen.
I mean, the whole concept. We're going to talk about fossil fuels and better for the economy, better for the energy, better for the air, better for everything, better for the greater good. The greater good is going to be two words that are going to be really important for the Biden administration. Greater good. You will suffer for the greater good. The miners who are going to be making solar panels. I'm sure somebody at age 60 will make an easy transition. Except those companies don't exist right now. But we'll discuss that later. And our first guest is just terrific for this.
That's right. A lot to talk about on the show today. We have an incredible guest coming up here just in a second. We're going to be talking about the minimum wage later on in the show, the $15
Andy
an hour
Puzder is going to be here again.
Yeah, that's a
lot of fun.
But first, we have the incredible Stephen Moore, who's an advisor at FreedomWorks these days. He's done many, many things in his career. He's a former economic advisor to President Trump, and he's an author of many things, but he's written a piece in The Hill. We saw it. We liked it. Donald Trump had an economic record that will be remembered. Amen. Stephen, welcome back to Made in America.
Hi, gentlemen. Good to be with you.
So, tell us, what will President Trump's economic legacy be?
Well, I think it's a great question to ask because, of course, the left wants to, impeach his behavior. And, I don't defend his behavior after the election, but there's no impeaching his record of accomplishment on the economy. It's been spectacular, really. I mean, one of the best of any presidents in modern times, if not the best. And we saw record low poverty rates, record low unemployment rates, record low inflation, record low interest rates, record high wage gains for American workers, and of all races and ethnicities, all genders. So it was a broad-based prosperity that really lifted. By the way, the most amazing thing is that minorities actually did better than whites did, and lower income people did better than higher income people did.
Well, yes. I mean, we need another whole show just to go over that again. But the litany is incredible for what this man did. He was just an incredible president when it came to the economy. Stephen, he said he would do certain things. And one of the things that stands out in my mind is that he actually delivered on what he said he would do, including the average American's income, take-home pay, went up more than in the last three presidents. Just an amazing job for the average American. So you would, wow, he would probably get reelected. Oh, that's right, he didn't. It didn't happen.
Well, I remember this time almost exactly a year ago. It's almost to the year to today. I was sitting back and looking at this incredible economy with 7 million surplus jobs. We'd never had that before. We had a big problem. We had 7 million more jobs than we had people to fill them. And I used to joke to President Trump. I'd say, Mr. President, stop creating so many jobs. We don't have enough workers for all these jobs. What a wonderful problem for a country to have. And I remember pinching myself thinking, something's going to happen. It's going to be an earthquake, or we're going to have a tidal wave, or a tsunami, or some terrorist attack or something. I didn't count on a pandemic, a once in a century pandemic. But the amazing thing too that Trump needs to deserve credit for is not only did he build the economy once from the kind of melees of the Obama years, and by the way, the Democrats have rewritten history. Have you noticed that? Oh my gosh, it was so great under Obama. No, it wasn't. We had 7-8% unemployment throughout most of his presidency. It was a terrible performance, actually. I give it about a D, not enough, because he did inherit a bad economy, but he just never fixed it. And so Trump came in and. After the first half of the year when we were battling that pandemic, he really got the economy back. And it's the only reason the economy didn't do better in the fourth quarter is because all of these blue states, with blue state governors like Cuomo and New York and my home state of Illinois, Pritzker, and California's Governor Newsom, they shut down their economies. And, you can't have growth if you shut down your businesses. One of the great mistakes I think we ever made in this country was the lockdown of our economies. A tragedy that it continues to this day. The only thing that's eclipsed by in terms of stupidity is shutting down our schools. It's amazing to me. Here we are 10, 11 months into this pandemic, and every single shred of evidence shows that kids are not vulnerable to this disease, and we still don't have our kids in school. I can't even talk about it rationally. I'm so angry. This is a case of national child abuse.
Well, that's the interesting thing in what you're just talking about right now with the schools is that the unintended consequences that I don't think the Democrat, well, maybe they did think of it because they're part of that. I mean, the unions are fighting it. For example, in Illinois, was it Chicago, that the school board said we want to reopen, and the union says we're not going to do that. But they did have the ability to get out there and make all these nice videos that they can have a good time with. And then they wanted teacher unions want an increase in pay. If they don't get the increase in pay, they're going to strike. I wouldn't know if the strike was on because they're not in school anyway. But
I don't think that. What? I don't even think they want to teach. I really don't. I mean, if I were out of my job for 10 months. I'd be itching to get back on the job, no matter what it was. But, if I couldn't teach for 10 months, I'd be crawling back to the classroom. They don't want to. I don't think a lot of these people want to teach. And they have, webs, they were wearing all T-shirts, we're not going back to work and things like that. I mean, they're treating like this is like it's some kind of a paid vacation, which it has been for many of these teachers. I mean, not all of them. Some of them are very honorable, and they've really worked hard with the online remote learning. But the other thing is we got hundreds of thousands of kids around the country that have never even turned on the computer.
It's amazing. I mean, look, I can't imagine, how far these kids are going to be set back. I mean, you just can't learn that way. You just can't learn that way, Stephen. I mean, no. Are we going to? What impact is it going to have on these kids' future and their ability to earn?
Very negative. And look, I just even think of my own family. Like, we have 2 boys at home now, and it's amazing how kids can be so different. Same mother, same father, but very different kids. One of them is, very well motivated, and he can sit there in front of the computer screen for 5 hours, and the other one's hyperactive. He's more like me. He can't sit in front of the computer screen for an hour. And for the one, it's worked out fine. For the other, it's been a tragedy. And so, what's interesting is that the left loves to talk about income inequality and inequality of wealth and racial inequality. Well, who are the people do you think have been hurt most by shutting down the schools? Rich parents, what they've done? They've sent their kids to private schools that are open. It's the lowest income parents and kids that are basically going without schooling. You take a 8-year-old and you deny them a whole year of school, you do real damage to their lifetime earnings potential.
Well, Stephen, what's also, and Neil, this affects you. You're a manufacturer. You have many manufacturing companies.
Yeah.
And you have indicated before, aren't you having trouble getting some folks to come back to the manufacturing job that you have sitting there in different states that you're in right now because of the fact that the schools are closed and somebody's got to be home?
Yeah, that's another thing. It's just,
I mean, that's an unintended consequence.
The whole workplace has been impacted by this as well. The efficiencies of American companies. How do we compete in the world? And then there was this whole thing, Stephen, with the unemployment insurance. It was like you can't hire people anymore because they make more money to stay at home.
So I was just going to mention that was a big problem. We had the weirdest situation last summer when the economy was starting to get back on its track and on its feet. And you had a lot of companies, you'd see help wanted signs all over the place, and yet we still had 20 million people unemployed. And the problem was that because of Nancy Pelosi, we were paying people, in some cases, twice as much money to stay unemployed than to go back on the job. And that's an important point, by the way, because Pelosi and Schumer, as we speak, are trying to shove through this $1.9 trillion phony COVID relief bill. And it gives people $400 a week extra unemployment benefits on top of the normal benefits. Casey Mulligan, one of the top economists in the country at University of Chicago, and I estimate that if they do that, we're going to have 5 million fewer workers. 5 million fewer workers because workers will not go back on. I mean, people aren't stupid. If they've got a very tough job working in a factory or working as a truck driver or other tough jobs, they're going to sit on the couch and say, hey, I get twice as much money for staying home. By the way, how is that fair? Liberals love to talk about fairness. How is that fair to the people who work 40 hours a week?
Exactly. And look, I got to tell you, as a manufacturer, I was completely impacted by what you just said. And by the way, it never normalized. And Stephen, we got to take a quick break. We're together with Stephen Moore. He's advisor at Freedom Works. He's also a former economic advisor to President Trump. Still a lot more to talk about with Stephen Moore and Dr. Rich Rothman. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we are together with Stephen Moore, advisor at Freedom Works and former member a former economic advisor to President Trump. He played a very important role. He and his good friend Larry Kudlow,
Art Laffer.
Before even being elected, the whole economic plan that was actually enacted once President Trump was elected and has been so successful in creating more jobs than we knew what to do with.
Well, Stephen, I'm so glad you're on the show today because you just moved into an area of the $1.9 trillion in this Biden concept of creating jobs and saving the economy. Look, of all the people that we could talk to today, this week, when all the executive orders are being signed, is Stephen Moore. Stephen was part of the original team that created the ideas and the thoughts that President Trump articulated in Manhattan at the Economics Club that really worked for this country. Stephen is in the DNA of that. So, Stephen, when you look at the Biden plan, and I know you did a piece also this week, which I read, a great piece, that I think you have a better idea. What is that?
Well, first of all, I have to say that it's been just a little over a week of the Biden presidency. It seems like a year, doesn't it? I mean, I can't even keep up with all the crazy things that are coming out, and I'm disappointed. I always put our country first. I don't wish any ill will towards this president. I want him to succeed. I want our country to succeed. But my goodness, I mean, you guys, have you ever seen anything like this? I mean, the first thing, we're going to kill 10,000 energy jobs. Then we're going to put America back in the worst treaty in the history of the United States, the Paris Climate Accord. Then we're going to have a $15 on our minimum wage and put teenagers out of work. And then we're going to have a $2 trillion spending bill, all paid for with debt, when we just passed a $1 trillion bill a few weeks ago. And, then we're going to allow the Chinese to have access to our electronic grid. And then, I could go on and on and on. Oh, remember when Trump said, this is something I remember when he first said it. I was in the room. He said, for every new regulation, remember this one? For every new regulation, we're going to get rid of 2 regulations. Well, that was one of his first executive orders. Biden comes in and he says, I'm repealing this. And I loved the language he used. He said, this executive order that by Trump is frustrating. He used the word frustrating our federal regulators. I'm like, that was the point. We don't want them to be regulating. We want them to keep their hands off the economy. He wants, this is going to be a re-regulation economy. One of the things that, I want to kind of test your guys. I'm gonna do a little quiz with you because I just got these numbers literally this morning. Do you know what percentage of all of Americans' energy that we consume every year? Do you know what percentage of that energy comes from natural gas, coal, and oil, the fossil fuels?
Well, I would say I'm going to reverse. I have to invert that a little bit. Renewable fuels is about 11%, 8 to 11%.
I'm talking. Hold on. I'm talking about all energy, transportation fuels, electricity, all energy we use.
Oh, it has to be way up there.
It's 5%.
5%.
5% of all of our energy. That's amazing.
I'm handing back my PhD. It's over.
Yeah, no,
I wasted 7 years.
How much money have we spent over the last 30 years subsidizing wind and solar power? And it's up to 5%. Now, do you know what percentage comes from wind? From oil, gas, and coal? Take a wild guess.
Well, then, if 5% comes from renewable, then wouldn't the balance come from fossil fuels?
Well, we have other forms. We have nuclear power and
nuclear. You got to put that in there too. I guess I would say 60%.
You're too low. 80%.
80% comes from power. Yeah. So it's a big part of it's a big part of the picture.
Exactly. 80%. By the way, most people are stunned by those numbers. The media never tells us that. So we're getting 80. We're going to go from 80% to zero. How insane is that? Is that insane? We're going to shut down the American economy. You can't go from 80% to zero in 10 years. That would completely cripple every industry we have. How are you going to build steel? How are you going to make cars? How are you going to have the technology? How are you going to have any of this stuff? If we're going to try to, these guys really think we can go to full, wind and solar power. It's such a fantasy, and it's a dangerous fantasy. And by the way, natural gas is a clean burning fuel. It's a wonder fuel. It's cheap. It's abundant. It's made in America. It's reliable, and it's clean. And yet the liberals are against that.
So Stephen, how much of this?
How can you explain that? I'm scratching my head like, why are they against natural gas? Is it because it's so good?
Yeah, because it's a fossil fuel, and it falls under the umbrella of fossil fuels, and the prejudice against that.
We use more natural gas than any other country. We have the cleanest air.
Yeah.
Well, that's irrelevant.
You don't care. I know. It
doesn't matter. It's not the agenda. That's what counts. It's the agenda.
You got me going here. Then we have another form of energy that emits no pollution. You know what that is?
What's that?
Nuclear.
I don't want to guess anymore. I'm always wrong.
Hydrogen.
Yeah, nuclear power.
Did I get wait a minute. Did I get points for that? Hydrogen.
I think you do. I'm going to give you some points for that.
All right. Geez, I feel better. I'm redeemed.
We still get 15% of our energy from nuclear power. Nuclear power is a great way to get energy.
That's not fair. You can't use nuclear. That's going to upset Michael Douglas. You can't, and Jane Fonda. You can't do that.
That's right.
It's not going to happen.
No, I just get so frustrated because what they want to do is use the most costly, least efficient form of energy. Energy is the master. You're in manufacturing. You know this. How can you manufacture anything without cheap and abundant energy?
And it's one of the advantages that we have as a U.S. manufacturer.
That's our selling point of the United States.
Exactly.
Cheap, affordable energy that's always there.
And let me tell you, I've lived in Asia, and let me tell you, energy is very expensive and not easy to get, especially electricity.
Well, I'll get to tell you guys another story because you really got my blood boiling here. So, people don't realize that Germany, you guys know this story, Germany, which is, you're in manufacturing, all the stories about German engineering, and they manufacture cars and make BMWs and they make Mercedes. And, we all marvel at German and, manufacturing. Germany tried the green energy approach about 15 years ago. They said, you know what, we're going to go all in. We're going to do the wind. We're going to do the solar. You know what happened? All their manufacturers went bankrupt.
Yeah, they crunched out.
Yeah, they had to abandon it. They said, this stuff doesn't work. We're getting crushed by the United States that's using energy that's half as expensive as we are. So the green energy has been tried. The green energy experiment has been tried, and it completely flopped in Germany. So now we're going to try it?
Well, yeah. Well, it looks like we're going to have a lot to talk about over the next few years, Stephen.
Exactly.
We're going to get your blood boiling some more here. Hey, Stephen, unfortunately, we're out of time. Folks, we've been with the infamous Stephen Moore, advisor to FreedomWorks, former economic advisor to President Trump, an incredible personality, a great host on Neil Asbury's Made in America. We really appreciate him being here today. Stephen, thanks for being with us.
Okay, thanks, guys. Take care. Have a great day. Bye.
Coming up, we have former CKE Restaurant CEO Andy Puzder, and we're going to talk about the $15 minimum wage and what that will do to our economy. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Rich, I've been on the Hannity show with Stephen Moore. He's been on our radio show many times
for years,
and boy, he's all exercised, man. He's all jazzed up.
How could you not be right now?
It's a week into the administration.
We're losing jobs by the hour. My sister calls me. My older sister calls me. Listen, he lost another 58,000 jobs this afternoon. He wanted to know if I knew it. I said, yeah, it's all over my phone. I get it. I understand that. We're getting into this. This is like, I can't wait for week 2. Oh my God.
Oh my goodness!
Andy's going to explain the whole thing to us. I know that's going to happen.
You just
stole make me feel better.
We're very pleased. You just did a great job of
segue,
getting the folks excited, even more excited than they already are. We're very pleased to have Andy Puzder, who is the former CEO of CKE Restaurants, and you know them as Carl's Jr. and Hardee's.
Great brands.
Great brands. Great restaurants.
Iconic brands.
And currently he's the senior fellow at Pepperdine University, and he's with us right now. Andy, welcome to Made in America.
Great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
So we talked earlier on the show and kind of was commiserating about the $15 minimum wage and why do we need that. And as Stephen Moore brought up just a moment ago about it's going to destroy jobs for our teenagers and people going to school. I know that I worked from a very early age. Those minimum wage jobs for me were incredibly important for my career and getting me ready for what was to come. But why, on the left, they just been in love with this $15 an hour minimum wage, and it's just always been there. And I guess now that Biden's in the White House, by God, they're going to do it by hook or by crook. I mean, what happens next?
Well, to put this thing in context, you have to remember the arguments that you were just making are really very valid and strong arguments, and Steve's very good on this point. But we're actually coming out of a pandemic and the deepest recession since the Great Depression. So this is a bad time economically, and what we need are jobs. Now, 50% of the jobs in this country were created by small businesses before the pandemic, but as you guys know, small businesses are dropping like flies. I mean, we've lost tens of thousands of small businesses have closed permanently, and the ones that have survived have had help from the federal government under the payroll protection plan, where the government's pledged about $1 trillion to help them pay their employees. They're just barely surviving as we come out of this. And so what does President Biden want to do? And Bernie Sanders? Well, they want to increase labor costs for the people that we've been lending money to so they could pay their employees. We want to take the minimum wage up to $15 for businesses that are barely surviving, that are hiring, that want to hire people, that want to grow, but they can't because these economic lockdowns have killed their business and they've been unable to hire and unable to grow. Not only does he want to increase the minimum wage to $15 and make it impossible for these people to stay in business, but he also wants to increase unemployment benefits by $400 a week, which means that it's going to be more profitable for people to stay home than it is to go out and work. So we're going to want small businesses to create jobs to get us out of the pandemic so the economy can recover. And Biden's plan to do that is to increase the cost of hiring people, which will discourage businesses from doing so, and then discouraging people from working by paying them not to work. I mean, this is utter nonsense. It's almost as nonsensical as their energy plan.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, why is it that the Democrats just don't understand that, local markets can really dictate what you have to do? And why is it also that they come up with the myth that, folks are really only making $7 or $8 an hour? They're really not making only $7 or $8 an hour. There are ways for them in terms of tips and so forth that they are making more money than that. But we keep coming back to the stereotype myth that it's impossible for these people to make more than $7 or $8 an hour, and we have to subsidize that, and we have to make sure it's 15. In the meantime, there's nowhere for them to go. I mean, how do what I find interesting, Andy, is that I've been watching The Real Color. I'm in the publishing business for many, many, many years, a lot of magazines. And the color in the story would be Main Street, what's happening in L.A., for example, or San Diego, or L.A., I think, where this woman has a restaurant. She's told she has to be outside. She spends all that money to get her outside ready to go. Then Newsom says, well, you can't do that. No outside. We have bad numbers. We can't do that. And then within 24 hours, a movie set is setting up 3 large tents next to her for outdoor eating for the folks who are shooting a movie. In the meantime, here's the color. In the meantime, the average person, Joe on the street, can't survive because they put all their money into staying around and keeping the people there. Then they put money into getting something they could do outside. Then they're told, maybe we're coming out of the pandemic. And, oh, by the way, you're going to have to maybe triple or double what you're paying people right now. I mean, these people are going to just jump into the Pacific Ocean, Andy.
Well, you sure giving me a lot to talk about there. Let's start with the...
Was that good? I thought that was all right.
You should be in radio.
You could make the minimum wage $2 an hour. That doesn't mean people would be earning $2 an hour. Right now it's $7.25. If you want to know what people are earning, drive by your local fast food restaurant. They're all advertising for $11, $12 an hour starting wages. Nobody makes $7.25 an hour because under President Trump, unlike under President Obama, where we had no months where there was 3% wage growth, before the pandemic, we had 20 straight months of 3% plus wage growth. The average wage in the United States went from $26 an hour when President Trump was elected to almost $29 an hour by the time the pandemic hit. So we had very substantial wage growth. Nobody's making $11 or $12 an hour. What's happening in California, for example, with these lockdowns is absolutely absurd. I had an article in the Wall Street Journal a week or two ago about a woman named Molly who runs an Italian restaurant in Santa Barbara, California. She called me in tears. That's my favorite Italian restaurant, by the way. But she called me in tears because she couldn't pay her employees. She couldn't pay her rent. She didn't know where she was going to live, what she was going to do, because Gavin Newsom shut down outdoor dining. Why you would shut down outdoor dining, it makes no sense. There was no indication that was spreading COVID at all. Now, after the inauguration, right? After the inauguration, Newsom comes out and says, you know what, the numbers aren't getting better yet, but we think they're going to get better, so we're going to pull back on these restrictions. Now you can have outdoor dining. In other words, they were driving people out of business purely for politics, purely to make President Trump look bad. Cuomo's now said, I think we can pull back on the restrictions in New York. Whitmer is allowing restaurants to open in Chicago. Mayor Lightfoot in Michigan. Mayor Lightfoot in Chicago wants to talk to the governor. This is the day after the inauguration. She announced she's going to meet with the governor to try and get restaurants open in Chicago. This was political. They let people's businesses die. They let people's jobs die. They took income from people. They took the respect and dignity of a job and running a business away from people. It was ridiculous. It was political, and they should be punished politically for it. It should be obvious now to everyone what they were doing.
Hey, Andy, we got to take a quick break. Folks, we're together with Andy Puzder. He is former CEO of CKE Restaurants. That's Carl's Jr. and Hardee's. He's also a very important advisor to President Trump, economic advisor to President Trump. He's with us. Stay with us. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we are together with Andy Puzder. He is the former CEO of CKE Restaurants and former economic advisor to President Trump. Andy, so much to talk about and so little time. What power does Biden have to unilaterally enact a $15 an hour minimum wage? I mean, can that just be done through executive order? I mean, is that something that has to go through Congress? You know, what's the next steps with that?
Well, he can't do it through executive order. He can order that people who are employed, contractors who are employed by the federal government, pay their employees $15 an hour, which of course means that all of us taxpayers are going to pay a lot more to get things done than we otherwise would have had to. But he does have the authority to do that. Congress would have to increase the minimum wage. It would have to pass the House, which it already has. It would have to pass the Senate, which is less likely. I doubt that it's going to have the 60 votes that it needs to get to get through the filibuster and get passed in the Senate. But who knows? You know, sometimes there are Republicans that sometimes vote for these policies because they think they need to. But it'd have to get through Congress, and we'll see if that happens or not. Sanders is pushing it, but we'll have to wait and see.
What do you think? What do you think will have to happen for the winds of change? And it's because you were just talking about California and about shutting down the restaurants and the misery and everything that's going on out there. I flew for a meeting for a day to Southern California last week from South Florida, and I got to tell you, it was night and day. It was like parallel universes. I leave South Florida, and it's like what pandemic?
Yeah, we're thriving.
What pandemic?
We're thriving.
What pandemic? Everything's open. Restaurants are open. It's just like people are getting on with their lives. Yes, everybody's wearing a mask, and everybody, I think, is being responsible about it. Then you go to Southern California, and I got to tell you, it's gloom and doom. I mean, you walk into a hotel, everybody's scared, and you know, it's just the feel. It was like, wow, that's like crazy. And I'm glad I don't live in that place. So what happens in California? Are people going to just get so fed up with this stuff and just say, look, enough's... Hey, look, you got a recall going on with Governor Newsom right now that's pretty close.
And they're getting very close to the minimum they need. Yep.
Is the winds of change blowing in California, or is that just too rich of a thought?
Well, my friends in California tell me that they think the reason that the lockdowns were lifted last week wasn't only because Biden was now inaugurated as president. It had to do with the number of signatures they had on the recall petitions, which are close. It's very likely they're going to get the number of signatures they need to get Newsom out of office, and I think that will send a message not only to him but for anybody who follows him into office if he is in fact recalled and not reelected. There's a strong message here that people. I'm in Tennessee. We're open for business here too. You could go to restaurants, you can go wherever you want, and the per capita death rate in California now is above what it is in Florida, and that's even though you have people. You have an older population in Florida because of all the retirees. If you look at this death rate by age group, if you adjust it so you consider people's ages in it, California is doing worse than Florida, and Florida is wide open. So a lot of this was political. Look, they pulled out every possible ploy they could come up with, every conniving, everything they possibly could do to politically damage President Trump, and it worked. I mean, they got somebody elected who's I don't think a lot of people think is competent to be president, but he got elected and he is the president at this point. And they pulled every trick out of the book they could to get the guy elected, and it worked. And a part of this was really overstating the threat from the pandemic in these blue states. And to the extent it made people nervous, it succeeded. Now, of course, we've got the vaccine. I got my shot last Friday, my first shot from the Moderna vaccine. Thank God for Moderna and capitalism and Operation Warp Speed.
Oh, thank God for President Trump, who had the intelligence and the fortitude to cut through the bureaucratic tape to make it happen. That's really important, very, very important. If it was not for President Trump, that wouldn't have happened, I think.
Well, and because he cut the red tape, we've got a little company from Massachusetts, this Moderna. And as I said, I got the shot last Friday. Beat every country in the world to coming up with a vaccine. The only people that came up faster was another American company, Pfizer.
Right. Which I got, by the way, last week as well. I did that.
if the socialist governments, if these governments that Bernie Sanders is so pleased with and their medical systems were so wonderful, maybe one of them would have come up with a vaccine. None of them did. One in China, it turns out, it's about 50% effective. They tested it in Brazil. The Azteca, is that it? The Oxford University Azteca vaccine is about 70% effective. Moderna and Pfizer are 94, 95% effective. So this is a real testament to President Trump, Operation Warp Speed, and American capitalism.
And Andy, I mean, this is a question, that you're very qualified to answer. I mean, what happens to America's restaurant industry, going forward? I mean, what happens? How much can they recover, and how quickly can they recover?
Well, it's interesting. The fast food restaurants with drive-throughs, or restaurants that had a high percentage of their business third-party delivery, like Uber Eats or or DoorDash, they've actually done better in the pandemic than they did before the pandemic. So they're going to come out of this pretty strong. It's your mom and pop restaurants. It's your local Chinese or Italian, local pizza place. These are the people that have been shutting down and suffering. The small businesses, the entrepreneurs, that put their life's work into renting out a building and making great food for their neighborhood. They're the ones that are going to be gone when this is over. And that'll be a tragedy for America. It's not only a lost job, but we'll lose a lot of our culture.
Yeah, I mean, it's like going to New York City. What do? If there's no restaurants,
you don't go.
Yeah,
that's the point.
And I don't see how they recover. Andy, hey, thanks. It's been incredible to have you back with us. A great guest, Andy Puzder, former CEO of CKE Restaurants, senior fellow at Pepperdine University, former advisor to President Trump. It's really great to spend some time with you today, Andy.
Great to be here with you guys. Anytime, just let me know. It's very therapeutic to do this.
We love it. We love it. We love it. We love it. Thanks for being here for us.
We're all going to need therapy for the next 4 years.
We'll be group therapy sessions here on our show.
Thanks, guys.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I are going to have some final thoughts for the day.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, two incredible guests, Stephen Moore today and Andy Puzder. I mean, both have been on our show before. Really great insights. There's going to be a lot to talk about, and
I think Stephen's still talking. I mean, we've had him on a number of times on the show over the years, but I have never seen Stephen get on a horse and ride it this hard when he's so concerned about certain things. And I got to tell you, he was on a high horse today running.
Yeah.
And you know what? Rightfully so.
And then, of course, Andy and the minimum wage. And see, the one thing that bothers me with the minimum wage is that a minimum wage of $15 in many cities of our country is just not enough. So what's 15? Why is that a magic number, right? Why is that a magic number? Now, if you go to rural America, $12 an hour is a great job because the cost of living. And if you all of a sudden say that in rural America that you got to pay $15 an hour, many of those jobs and companies and businesses can't exist.
Yeah, they're going to go. Right? They're going to go.
So $15 an hour in Seattle, does that mean that everybody's now going to lower their wage to $15 and everybody's going to make less? Or does it mean that in rural America that $15 an hour means that you don't have a job anymore because it can't afford to pay that rate? And by the way, it's not necessary because people are very happy because just the whole cost of living and everything is just so much different. How can you compare some remote town in Appalachia to downtown Los Angeles?
Right. You can't.
How do you compare the cost of living in those two locations? You can't. It just doesn't. They're different parallel universes. I mean, very different.
Well, yeah. I mean, and that's the sad part of the whole thing. But you see, I don't think it really has anything to do with that. I think you have to look at the bigger picture, and we don't have a ton of time to do it right now, but we can in a future show. And that is that Bernie Sanders, the progressives, have been pushing for a universal stipend. that the government would have a guaranteed income for everybody. That's what they want. That's part of their agenda, Neil. And if you look at what they're trying to accomplish with this guaranteed payment, which they pull from other countries, other socialist countries, it really equates to something like $15 an hour. So getting to $15 an hour is a red mark for them. It's a line for them that they really need. It's a baseline of where they want to be. That's a fact, Jack. And we can go into this. I'd be delighted to present a lot of research on that. But no, you cannot say, you're right, you're 100% correct. Someone sitting in Little Rock, making $15 an hour is, radically different than a guy sitting in Manhattan where I grew up. $15 an hour, of course, wouldn't cut it. $20 an hour wouldn't cut it. It's that much more expensive. So you really have to let local market dictate, which it does very effectively. Local market can dictate what people will earn, what they will spend, and so forth. But that doesn't work well when you're talking to a progressive, because that's not good. Then you're shifting the power back to the locals. They don't want to do that. They want to eliminate that, and they want to consolidate all the power up in Washington for bigger bureaucratic government. So Andy's right, 100%. This is not good. This will cost a ton of jobs. If you have to go do this, you're going to lose a lot of jobs.
And I think, the numbers you're talking are staggering. And when you combine that with what we're doing with our energy industry right now, the whole fossil fuel industry. And hey, look, isn't it all about slogans, right? It's a slogan, right? $15 an hour minimum wage. It's a slogan. Climate change. It's a slogan. But the issues are so much more complex than that. Like what Stephen Moore said today, natural gas is one of the cleanest gases or cleanest forms of energy that you can have.
Oh, absolutely. And it's abundant.
And we have
it's inexpensive.
And we have it, and it's clean, and your air is clean, and everything that
we export it. We have so much.
But it's a slogan. Fossil fuels are bad, right? So anything from fossil fuels are bad. So therefore, it doesn't fit the slogan.
Well, if you think about it, the fossil fuels, that whole industry, oil and natural gas and, shale and fracking and coal and everything that falls under that umbrella was very important to the Obama Trump administration. And he pushed very heavily to make us energy independent. Now, to eliminate that really turns the corner completely from Trump back to Obama and Biden. So that's where we're headed right now. That's what's going to happen, and it's most unfortunate. You're right. Ironically, the cleanest fuel that you can use right now, and we're doing a great job. We have less output of CO2 than we did 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Can you say that for people like the folks in India and China, who's, by the way, not part of the Paris Climate Accord? They don't do anything till maybe 2030, maybe. No guarantees, maybe. Put that one in your pipe.
Yeah, they self validate. It means that there is no control over what happens there. Anyway, Dr. Rich, thank you for being with me today, and it was been wonderful to spend time with you and our guests. But unfortunately, we're out of time. We're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.